Call the Town Council meeting of February 25, 2025 to order. Jennifer, will you take roll?
Councilmember Alberish,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Gold, Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Here. Councilmember Brown, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Not on the agenda, but I'm going to ask the council for a motion to continue new business item A, which is the town center plan. I want to remove it from the agenda and push it back based on the fact that I personally was not thrilled with the scope, and I've heard from one other council member that they're not as well, and I think it's important that we reframe that and bring it back, perhaps even in a study session for direction from council before moving forward, because it is a very important part of what we're trying to accomplish from a strategic planning point of view. So I would ask for a motion to remove and continue new business item A to a different evening.
Move that we approve it and continue at a different time.
Okay, so second from Mr.
Seconded.
Brown. And was there any deliberation?
Oh,
on that?
I mean, yes.
Yes, I thought there would be for, yes.
Not opposed to moving it back. I guess maybe I just wanted a little bit more context to understand what about the scope were you not thrilled about? And maybe if the other council member who shared that view wanted to chime in if he was so inclined. Just would love to hear more details.
I can comment on that.
You want to go first? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go first. And then the scope, to me, I wanted to know the scope of what's going to be impacting on the town of Woodside. Not what has been, but what will be. And the scope doesn't seem to talk about that. It talks about a traffic study, but this traffic study is evaluate existing traffic studies, not anything new. I'm looking at the town of Woodside. And to me, that includes Skyline Boulevard. It includes the northern, it includes the southern parts. To me, we ought to be looking at the totality of the town, not just downtown. I know this is modeled after what we did in 1988, a town center study. But I think we need to be rethinking how broadly do we want to be looking at it. That's why I would like it to be broader than just this.
And my dovetail might be a little bit different. You know, we're doing this because it's part of our housing element. And I thought about it more as pre-strategic planning for RHNA Cycle 7 and thinking about where housing density might go. And the geographic range that is under consideration is very narrow. It literally is how we define town center. I understand why that happened. But I'm looking for something a little bit more robust that actually would draw some conclusions that we might then be able to think more broadly about for the next housing element. And I just don't feel that it's part of the scope of what we asked for, and I think that's an error on our side. I think the actual proposal is excellent. I don't have any, I don't want to get into any deliberation, but for what we asked, but I just think the scope might need to be wider.
Okay. Just responding to that. So we have been waiting to make progress on the town center plan for a long time. So on the one hand, like I want to make sure it's teed up appropriately, and I worry a little bit. I mean, this is a town center plan project, and so what you described to me would be like a town project, like going up to Skyline. From what I was understanding this project to be, would be out of scope. But I think that's a good discussion to have. So I worry about continuing it and then having a study session and then rescoping the RFP. I mean, like how much of a delay are we talking here?
I don't know. That's more of a staff question, but and we can ask that. I do think this is a situation where we need to measure twice to cut once. This is a important part of what we're doing. I do not want to send a mixed message to the state or to HCD about where we're going, or that I certainly do not want a no vote on that tonight. I think that's at risk. So that's why I think it's important to continue so that we do this in an orderly process that hopefully has the entire input and acceptance from the majority of the folks at this dais.
But I think, happy to take the suggestion to continue it, but I would say I think it really needs to be prioritized and brought back expeditiously so we can make progress, because I think we've been waiting to move forward on this for quite a while.
We have a second and a motion. Any other comments? Did you want to lean in as well on staff at all?
No, I was going to say, I agree with Councilmember Wall. This is the top priority that's on my
Absolutely
desk.
is.
So you should also take public comment on the question of continuing.
Just to comment on what was said earlier. It won't surprise you, anybody sitting at this table here, that I agree a little bit with what Dick said and Jen said. One, it is a priority, but we've had, let's not forget that there's been a lot of opportunities over the last few years to do this, and we've kind of punted. But I think that Jen is right that this isn't a town-wide housing element review. It is the town center plan. I spoke with Kevin earlier tonight about it. I do agree that the scope is a bit narrow. I mean, but we're just talking about geography here, where to draw the lines on our streets. How far do we go towards the freeway and how far do we go towards the school? That's sort of my issue is just how wide that should be. I'm not looking at including Skyline or any of the, I mean, to me, that's beyond the scope of the town center plan, which includes circulation and, how we travel around and a lot of other issues, including development. So I'm fine with tabling it, but the question that I have for actually, I guess the town attorney is, are we better off discussing the item and taking in public comment and then and then pushing it out further, or just taking it off the agenda now? I guess we could do either one that we want.
You could do either one. The motion made to continue though, and that's a priority. So that should be the motion that's voted.
Okay.
And just to let some members of the audience know who I know walked in after you'd already begun this discussion, the question that you're debating now is whether to continue the item. So when you call for public
Item A,
comment,
yeah.
the public should only address the question of continuance, not the underlying proposals.
And I guess it maybe, since we're still in the deliberation period, I'd like to maybe push for some more details on when we would be able to bring it back. Like, what are we going to do between now and bringing it back?
I think refining the geography, to me, that's my issue. And by the way, my geography does not include
But I
Alice's
guess,
restaurant.
does that really require a continuance?
Kevin, you want to lean in on that? I mean, one of the solutions, frankly, was could we get an addendum to the proposal that would allow for an expansion of geography? That did not happen, and it certainly didn't happen in writing. So I don't think we really can, but I think we're relatively close to that. It could be a fast turnaround is what I'm trying to say. But I think with government, I don't want implicit, hey, I had a phone call and it was fine. I think it needs to be explicit in writing about the scope of the project. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think we would try to bring this back. I've heard about, so number one, I have talked to the consultant about, or the proposer about expanding the geography. And I gave example of property to the east and a few properties to the west to incorporate the fire district, the church, and the school. And they were amenable to that, said, yeah, that's pretty common with this kind of project. So that's not a problem. If we're talking about areas going further afield, then that's something that we're going to have to, I think, we don't want to get into contract and find out we're talking about different areas, or people have different expectations about what areas are being covered. I think, a townwide plan update is a general plan. That's a different project.
Mm-hmm. Is
So-
2 weeks acceptable?
Well, probably, but so basically what we're saying is we're asking the entity with whom we are proposing to contract to add what's a pretty modest expansion of the territory. So really, they just have to like cost that out, figure out how to adjust the proposal. We're not going to do a study session. We're bringing this back in 2 weeks. That seems pretty straightforward. Is my understanding that correctly?
I mean, I think we can do that, yes.
Okay, I think I can get my head around that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other deliberations before we take public comment on the continuance? Okay. Then we'll just, is there anyone that wants to speak on the continuance of new business item A before we take a vote? Mr. Lubin.
When I was reading the proposals, it seemed like some of the proposers had assumed that the current town center boundaries was the area that was looking at, which kind of, I thought about some, but in 2013, we had, it was a large item of discussion, just, whether the area should be expanded or not. And there was by no means unanimity of opinion about that, but so I think it's an important issue to discuss in looking at the town center plan. And I'm glad you are talking about that.
Thank you, Steve. Any other public comment? Yes, Ms. Paletti.
Hi, I'm Sue Paletti. I came tonight specifically to hear about the town center, but I absolutely give my mayor all my support. And if you want to continue, let's do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Paletti. That warmed my heart, Sue. I think with that, thank you for public comment. Jennifer, will you take a vote on the continuance of new business on May?
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold, Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Communications, public communications, actually. So persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the posted agenda are invited to do so. Please note the council cannot undertake extended discussions or act on non-agendized items. Those items can be referred to staff for appropriate action. And we do 5 minutes, 5 people, 3 minutes each. My only other one-liner quickly is just that 773 is actually on the consent agenda. So we'll pull that for public comment in the next section. Any public comment? I didn't pull the Zoom room up, but do we have anybody in the Zoom?
Oh, yeah, we have David Middleman.
Mr. Middleman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. This is actually Krista New. I'm just borrowing David's
Yep.
laptop. Thank you very much. I wanted to actually thank the council and Kevin Bryant. I had spoken last time about some neglected maintenance on the part of Caltrans on 84, and that they've done a phenomenal job at the bottom of the hill. So thank you very much for doing that by Waiwari Farm and by Wunderlich and Bear Gulch. I think that will make a great difference in the coming years. I do hope that the maintenance can be continued west along 84 whenever possible. But thank you again for all of your work.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that comment.
No one else online.
Okay, with that, we will close public comment, and we're moving on to interviews and appointments to the ASRB. Before we begin, I just want to provide a little bit of context. This is my 7th year on the council, and for the entirety of my time here, we have struggled to find people for Planning Commission and ASRB. We actually went 18 months with ASRB with 3 people, and with the 3rd person just sticking around until we could find someone to take their spot. So tonight is very different. It's the old adage, when it rains, it pours. We have 7 wonderful candidates for 2 spots. It is a blessing and a curse. We certainly, reading your candidate statements, it's an embarrassment of riches, but it is a curse because we will only be able to select 2 of you. So I want you to understand that this is an unusually competitive moment. If you aren't selected, there are a lot of wonderful volunteer committees, 12 of them, that do not have a public interview process associated with appointment. And we would welcome you in any capacity that you wanted to serve the town of Woodside. I think all I really wanted to communicate on behalf of the council is we have a tremendous amount of respect for each of you for being here tonight, be a part of it. It's a big responsibility. And with that, maybe we'll get down to brass tacks. So we do want to try to streamline this the best we can because we have 7 candidates. So we're going to give everybody 3 to 5 minutes to make the remarks. I know you were sent a couple of universal questions earlier that if you can incorporate into your remarks would be helpful, specifically on your background that you'll bring to the role, what motivated you to throw your hat in the ring, any specific experience or demeanor you have dealing with conflict and resolution of conflict, and your views on private property rights as it relates to balancing the rights of the individuals versus the input of the community. Those would be ideal. There may be some follow-up questions. There might not be. You might hit it out of the park if you nail all of those. So don't read anything into it one way or the other. And with that, yes, sir. Yeah, there will be a ballot process at the end where we will vote. All of this will be publicly available to you. We will go in rounds until we have 2 appointees. So we'll go from the largest vote getters down as long as you have at least the majority, 3 out of the 5 as a vote. So it might take a couple of rounds. So we apologize for the time, but that's going to be the process. And I think with that, we will kick things off in order of folks that are listed. So Mr. Timothy Connor, are you? Hi, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to approach the microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself? There's a little red button if it'd be helpful to bring it up closer to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Thank you
you.
very much. So I'm on.
Yes, you are, sir.
Sorry. Well, thank you for entertaining my candidacy. The question, so let me sort of start with my little bit of my professional background and then how I ended up here and what I view the ASRB to do. So I have a PhD in economics. I was a civil servant in the federal government in Washington, D.C. for a decade or so, and then ran the financial center for consulting at Stanford Research Institute and moved to Wells Fargo. And now I'm 99% retired from a financial planning company that my daughter and I and another couple of people started 20 years ago. I work just enough to get free paper clips and pens and enjoy being there. So I've lived in San Mateo County for 45 years now. I've moved to Woodside about a year ago. And about a year ago, I was here talking to the ASRB about building an ADU. And my daughter and I bought a property which we remodeled, and she built a big house and we built the little house. So one of the things that I thought was interesting is that the ASRB actually was very helpful. Despite some people think government sucks, I don't. I think some of the things that you guys helped us do was very helpful, and that in particular was get the community involved. We went up and down the street talking to all the neighbors and reached pretty much a good consensus about what we were doing as it impacted the community. And that seems to me to be the way to handle almost everything. I have a fair amount of experience dealing with conflict. All the jobs I've had tend to be let's work out a compromise. And I often kind of tongue in cheek say a compromise is a result that kind of annoys everybody. That's the definition. If everybody agreed to start with, you wouldn't have anything to talk about. In terms of the property rights, I think that Woodside is just a fabulous place. lived in Menlo Park for many years, and I sort of would come here once in a while, but I really didn't understand what a wonderful, wonderful community this is. And it's impossible to take a snapshot as of today and just stop. That's just not feasible. I like to think that our community is sort of like a family. And if I had a family, I would say everybody can have a compound and live on the compound. And what you build on the compound really should be up to you, except to the extent that it affects other people. In economics, we talk a lot about externalities, and building a home that is ugly, building a home that blocks light, building a home that causes traffic flow to be inappropriate. These are all externalities. And while we talk in the United States about property rights, the reality is, I think that property rights are circumscribed by the fact that we do live in a community. So I think the whole issue of the ASRB and the planning and the town council and everybody else is say, how do we all get along? And the answer is you talk about it and you talk about it and you talk about it some more. And those who have no patience for talking, they have no place in Woodside, in my opinion. That this is a place that we talk about things. In my professional life, I've dealt with controversy all the time. In my most recent career as a financial planner, we worked with family members, and there's not always agreement. Our job is to do what makes sense for everybody and bring them together. And financial planning is really not about money, it's about families. And that's how we've approached the work that we've done for the last 20 years. The other thing I would just kind of throw out is that as we look at the future of Woodside, everybody knows we have to build more housing. And one of the ways we're going to build more housing, I suspect, is through ADUs. And I have firsthand experience in building a wonderful ADU. I'd be delighted to show you pictures in a tour someday. It turned out to be just fabulous, and we're very happy there. But I think it's a little different than building a conventional house or a little different than building commercial property. So I think that might be valuable to have somebody who's gone through the process of doing an ADU. And that's kind of my 3.5 to 5 minutes, I hope. So I have
Thank
a
you.
quick question. I would like to excuse myself, if I may, for another engagement without prejudicing my candidacy, if that'd be okay.
That's absolutely fine.
Thank
Is there, Tim, if you, let me just check to make sure there's no follow-up questions. Any questions for Tim?
Pretty good.
All right,
Thank you.
there you go. Thank you so much. Don Lindsay. He's on virtual today.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Don. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I apologize not being there, but I'm currently in the wrong hemisphere, so I'll have to make do. I've had the good opportunity to interact with some of you in the council over the last couple of years. I've enjoyed that. I appreciate the insight that you bring to some of the challenges that I have faced in my last 2.5 years as a member of the ASRB and serving as chair for most of the past year. I've found my time on the board to be both educational in terms of learning about the needs of the town, expectations of the town, and primarily expectations of the residents of the town, but also fulfilling in that I feel that the board has made a measurable contribution to ensuring the town achieves its goals, both in preserving the character that makes it special, but also addressing the obligations set forth in the housing element. I think in the past year, we've had to navigate a number of challenging proposals, including the Kenyatta Road multifamily development and Roberts Market parking proposal. As a board, we've had to strike a balance between homeowners who have a strong opinion on what preservation of character means to them and how best to apply our residential guidelines as currently defined, which of course predate the higher density development. I anticipate we will continue to find these issues where the existing guidelines do not meet the needs of the housing element as we move forward. Having served only just a little over 2 years on the board, I am the longest tenured member currently serving. My hope is to continue to lead this board as chair, as all the members, myself included, continue to develop more experience with complex problems, complex proposals. We are going to continue to face development proposals that challenge all of our expectations on what defines the character of our town in the coming years. Just wrapping up, I'll note that I'm also serving as treasurer to the Woodside Hills Homes Association, and am constructing a new residence here in town, experiencing firsthand the end-to-end process, which is now, I think, coming up on our third and 3.5 year milestone. Finally, I'd like to echo Brian's comments regarding new candidates who've applied to serve on the board. I mean, you're right, we have 7 candidates for 2 positions. I myself did not get appointed to the board the first time I applied, so I strongly urge people who have any interest to continue to apply when opportunities present. So with that, I'll thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Don. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Lindsay? Yes, Councilmember Gold.
Don, Paul Gold here. I just wanted to thank you for your service and having attended some ASRBs. Your influence on that board is quite evident and appreciated. I did want to ask you a question about your own experience in building and dealing with the ASRB. Just if you've modified. I'm sort of reminded that I do remember when you applied originally and you had to come back, and I appreciate your perseverance, but I was wondering if you've modified the way you conduct yourself on the ASRB based upon your own project experience.
Well, of course, I had to recuse myself from my own project, but nevertheless observed. Those were in the very earliest days. Most of the board was made up by members who I don't serve alongside today. I think the opportunity that comes to mind is around efficiency. I think, we've heard enough of that with the number of steps required in order to get to the point where you're granted a building permit. That can be upwards of a year for many large projects. So I think, in the context of the number of steps required, the relationships to the planning commission, I think there is room for improved efficiency, and seeking out where we can remove overlap or redundancies, and just generally improve the pace at which we evaluate and approve new developments.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember.
Yep. So I am wondering, who do you see as the main stakeholders of the ASRB? And would love to hear just a little bit about how you balance the interests of those stakeholders. And well, yeah, that's basically the question.
At the risk of probably upsetting someone, I am going to say that the main stakeholders are the residents of the town. I mean, ultimately, we're accountable to the town itself in terms of ensuring a good process, but it's the residents to which we are entrusted to ensure that whatever the definition of character of the town is, that we are taking responsible decisions in terms to do our best and ensure that that is preserved. Not to say that some people won't be disappointed with outcomes. We, of course, do have to balance the needs of the town or the obligations of the town with regard to the housing element. But I think the ultimate measure is the degree to which we can preserve whatever definition of the character of the town that each resident has in their mind.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Don. Glenn Seidman. Hello, sir. Hi.
So I don't have direct experience with building things for community or any other community experience. But I thought that since I'm a scientist and an executive and I've overseen like as many as 12 simultaneous projects, at once and have people come to me for solutions and work them out, that paradigmatically that might be useful. And what motivated me, I don't know, about 3 years ago, I decided that I'm going to start doing some new and different things. I just saw this thing show up in the mail and I thought, hey, I've lived here for 28 years. This might be interesting and fun. And I can also contribute to the community. Uh, I don't know if this matters, but I did raise a son through the whole Woodside Elm. Okay. Let's see. Oh, any specific experience or demeanor? Yes. I am basically calm and cool all the time. Nothing really upsets me. I do listen to people and try to have them all be happy. That often is difficult. But I also do think I have a knack for telling people who may have lost a conflict that they lost, and here's why. And I've actually had people say they really appreciated the explanation. I think a lot of times people don't give them an explanation, and so they just walk around thinking it's unfair. Oh, yes. Since I am a scientist, I do like to put together a grid of all the attributes of a particular issue and then put together the weaknesses and strengths and then evaluate it all. And then I always share it. Communication with all the people working on the same thing is very important. Otherwise, people are just like, well, I don't know what he thinks. And they might call him, they might not. But here you have something to share and give comments. My view on property rights, I have thought about this since I saw the question. I couldn't come up with anything really concise. So my answer is, I feel like I'd have to see what the situation is, but I'd say for the most part, individuals should have a right to do whatever they want on the property. But yes, I totally agree with, sorry, you can't do that because you're ruining the town's character. And I'm actually really big on that. So that has to overrule in a lot of cases. But yeah, if it's inside the house, then I probably don't care. So that's a concise set of answers for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Seidman?
Yeah, I'll ask the same question I asked of the prior candidate. So who would you consider your primary stakeholders on the ASRB, and how would you handle those stakeholders?
Yeah, I heard you ask that question and I was like, wow, I wouldn't know what to say. I mean, the residents does sound like a really good political answer. And it probably is a good answer, but you know, there is this issue of town character that is where the ASRB are the guardians of that. And in a way, the town character is what's at stake with the ASRB. So maybe it is the people on the ASRB as the stakeholders.
Thank you.
I don't know, maybe it's a sloppy answer.
Oh,
No, that.
I have a question. Can I?
Yeah.
The town character, if your neighbor proposed building a home right next to you, that would potentially block a view across the valley or something like that, or the home structure was going to be, in your view, pretty ugly, how would you respond to that? And how would you expect ASRB to respond to that?
Yeah, I actually already saw that at a town meeting. I don't know how long ago it was. 15 years ago, maybe, where they were talking about that 15% limitation on that you can build on the properties. And somebody did want to do exactly that. And somehow it came into play that they were not going to let them only because of the 15% rule. But I think the way the law is right now in town of Woodside is that person can block the view. I don't know if that's correct, but that was my recollection. Because it's their land. But yeah, that is kind of a shame. I'm actually I actually have that problem myself right now. I have to keep asking my neighbors if I can cut down some of the trees that border our properties, because if I don't, then my view is blocked. I have a great view as long as I can keep doing that.
Just wanted to thank you for probably the most honest interview answers we've had here in a while.
What was that?
Thank you for probably the most honest answers I've heard in a long
Oh.
time from an interview candidate.
Oh, yeah, that's something else. I'm often too honest at my own detriment.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Seidman. Sunil Suri, online perhaps? Nothing? Okay. Bob Sullivan. Hey, Bob.
Good evening. Robert Sullivan. I'm in Hardwick, which is over in Woodside Hills. And we've been here for 14 years resident. We bought the property 19 years ago to classically tear down an older home that was substandard and build a new home, which is our final home. So my wife and I were born at Mills Hospital. We've been here forever on the peninsula and raised our 3 kids in Redwood City, where all 3 of them now live, and our grandkids as well. So we're not retiring and moving away like many of our neighbors. We are retiring and staying here for the next 30 years to enjoy Woodside. And having finished a 46-year career as a financial advisor, I merged my firm with a national firm and completed my service after 46 years on September 30th. I have a lot more time on my hands to be more engaged with the community, being here locally and very active in our kids' school boards, various activities. Really enjoyed that. And of course, being a CEO and co-founder of a financial advisory firm, dealt extensively with conflicts on behalf of clients, helping negotiate their lives, as well as hiring staff and managing the firm as a CEO. So it's been a great experience. So I'm looking to really take my experience to the community and be more engaged, because I have time to do it that I did not have previously. The notion of experience with the ASRB, having built a house, we've gone through it with both Woodside Hills Association and the association here at the town level. Our experience was good. Part of that's because we read the guidelines about building a house in Woodside that the town gave us when we started, and we were working in harmony. We didn't have any variances. We didn't have any big variations in terms of what we're trying to do, which made it really a painless process, because the ASRB looked at our plan and we were done in 20 minutes because they loved it. So it was great. But I was also at the same hearing when there were some other folks that were really, it was torturous. It was really a painful experience for those poor people. So I've seen both sides of it sitting in some of the hearings related to our project. And I don't kind of as a strike against the city, but it really helped illustrate to me how hard it is for the ASRB to do its job, respect private property rights, while at the same time maintaining the town's character. And that's a tough balancing act. I side pretty heavily on property rights, but nobody in my neighborhood has a scenic right to their view. So you have to be a cooperative neighbor and hopefully work together on those issues. And we have trimmed trees to make our neighbors' lives better, and we work, things are growing and they ask us to trim it. We try to respect that. But in the end, we ultimately have to let people build the homes they want to have, and hopefully do so in a way that doesn't create conflict. So I would say that there's an important duty to maintaining the town character and respecting design guidelines. But if it's within those parameters, certainly people should be able to build what they want to build in town. And my biggest complaint from my experience is we need to work really hard to get some of our personal biases off the table, and not bring, my taste is very different than other people's taste maybe. I think I have good taste, but everybody in the room probably thinks they do. And we're not always going to agree. I drive through Woodside all the time. I see a lot of diversity in the houses and styles, and I think that's great. So I'm not a cookie cutter, tract home, uniform thinking type person. I think the diversity of the town is great. and a lot of different styles of homes that have been built, particularly more recently with a lot more different materials, are really good examples of what makes it a really a great community to live in, not being too obsessed with cookie cutter and only your own ranges of colors and textures and materials. We have plenty of room on our 1+ acre lots to not feel like we're on top of each other. So there's plenty of room for negotiating with people to really feel like they can get what they want and at the same time make the ASRB effective.
Thank you. And Robert, I apologize for saying Bob earlier. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Sullivan?
All right, I'll ask you the same question I asked the other candidates, which is the stakeholder question. Who do you view as the main stakeholders of the ASRB, and how would you manage those stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, well, as I stated, I think pretty clearly, I would tend to really believe in private property rights and people's ability to do what they want. And I think any community-based function, whether you're a mayor or you're chief of police or fire, are all public servants at some level. So we need to be responsive to individual desires to accomplish something with their residents, but also be a good sounding board to make sure the town has reasonable restrictions and reasonable approaches and processes to help people achieve their goals without getting crazy stuff showing up all over the place. So it's an important role, an important function within the city's operation to help make sure the city really retains the character they're seeking, but at the same time, not be a heavy hand and usurping property rights at the same time. And it's a balancing act. I realize it's a real challenge.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah.
Vladimir Taft.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for considering my candidacy. I know some or many of you. I'll just go with the list of items which Jennifer published. The background. I was born in then Soviet Union. I'm UCLA graduate, class of 1982. After graduation, I settled in San Mateo County. I'm techie by training, a technical architect in terms of what I do. I've been married for 40+ years. Our grown-up kids went to local schools. Special mention and thanks to the Woodside Priory and Middle School. We bought the property after the house we built in Menlo Park. Actually, our ex-secretary of energy loved it so much that he convinced my wife to sell the house. So we came to Woodside, and the house we rebuilt right behind the Portola horse farm, the Atkinson's Ranch. Was recognized as a tasteful remodel in harmony with nature and the spirit of Woodside back in the day. It was more than 10 years ago. My motivation. My wife and I, we love the town. The Woodside nature is unique. The place is unique. Preserving that as much as possible is a challenge for all the residents and the town, especially being at the outskirts of Silicon Valley, where I worked for a number of decades. I guess that's the bulk of the motivation. Also having experience in kind of working with the town, with the staff, though understanding the process, I believe that I'm in a position to help to avoid glitches and conflicts, and conflict avoidance is a great part of keeping that delicate balance everyone is very well aware of. Specific experiences, other than what I mentioned above, in my line of work, I have to do, and I did a lot of consulting working for IBM Global Services and Deloitte, and I traveled around the country. Requirements analysis is very important. So sometimes I see the conflict when requirements are not clearly stated or clearly understood. So one of the things I bring to the work of this particular committee is to kind of help to sort out emotions and sentiments and really requirements and constraints, and the ability to read the architecture and architectural drawings and topos is also part of this, because we need to look at really what is the problem we're solving and what is the logistics of it, what is realistic, what is not. And also having built, and always for the family, because of that housing situation we have, the prices, it started when I was transferred. It was corporate transfer to Colorado. We came back, we just could not afford a house we left when we moved. So we built the house in, it was like Palo Alto. I'm familiar with how things are done there. And then our needs changed. We built a house in Menlo Park. I already mentioned that. And eventually, I mean, this is the place where my wife said, we are not living. We are staying here. So the house is designed to age in. It's a single story house and so on. That's, I think, important. All that these experiences and skills are important. Well, I'll wrap things up very quickly because being succinct is also important. So the balance, again, property rights are very clear. Possible conflict between what the neighbors want, what our regulations say, some of them may be outdated, what the reality dictates. I think that, again, keeping that balance requires all of the above skills. I also took, other than technical stuff, I took 3 years of psychology. Sometimes it's important to understand what motivates people, why they are so upset, and how to keep cool in a heated situation. So that's pretty much it. I hope you'll give it a fair consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taft. Councilmember Wall.
I want to make sure I ask the same question of all the applicants. So curious to hear your perspective on, and having served on the ASRB, who are the primary stakeholders and how do you approach managing those stakeholders?
Jennifer, I was sitting thinking that you probably would ask me that question, but gosh, I didn't have any prepared answer. So I'll just go by the gut, okay? I mean, who are the stakeholders? Residents clearly are major stakeholders, all of them. The closer people are to the place where the action takes place, the more important stakeholders they are, right? So there are stakeholders and there are stakeholders. The town is also a stakeholder because there are regulations, there are constraints, there are things which the town has to do, even whether they like it or not. And we'll know, what those situations are, or maybe. So again, different stakeholders. I cannot say, no, just it's only the residents, it's only the town, it's only what we have on the books, starting from the time when the Folgers were kind of running the show, and or when things were changing, or the state which dictates what the town has to do, or in some cases, unwillingly. So it's a combination of all of the above. There's no major stakeholder, but the closer residents are to the place where the action, which is in focus, the more the higher weight these stakeholders are. I guess I'm getting scientific a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Daft. And Cliff Weirley. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Thanks. All right, I'm Cliff Worley, and my background is mostly in residential real estate, and pull up some notes here so I don't forget anything, and I don't. But yeah, so I've worked in residential real estate for about 18 years, and I've also bought, sold, leased, and developed multiple properties here on the peninsula. My wife Natalie and I also own and operate a boutique real estate brokerage and a store in a historic brick building on Main Street in Redwood City. And we've been there for about 3 years. We've lived like at the top of Kings Mountain, like around 2011. And then we ended up buying a house in Emerald Hills, and we lived there for a while. And we were fortunate enough to move back here last year. And we have 3 kids in the school here. And I think that, the main kind of motivation for wanting to be involved is I think I'm just generally like kind of interested in it. I've been on the other side of the fence a lot. So, I know what that's like. And I mean, this is just like a really special place for us, and we, want to preserve it, and we're going to be here for a long time. So we're in for the long haul and want to kind of have a positive impact and, be involved. And in terms of like building and, how we view that, I mean, obviously, Natalie and I do a lot of that, but I mean, I think that, people should be able to build as they want within reason, and with, respect to building guidelines in place. I think community input is important because it ultimately, shapes a better product. And, having more eyeballs on it, it's, going to make it, I think, better for everybody. And, this case, the product being a permanent structure, it should be carefully and thoughtfully reviewed, and, just to kind of ensure it works really well in the environment. I think those are kind of the, main points I wanted to get out, and I'm happy to take any questions or elaborate if you like.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll go to our go-to over here.
Question that's coming.
Yeah.
So curious to hear your perspective on the ASRB stakeholders, and how would you go about prioritizing or dealing with stakeholder management on the board?
Yeah, so I mean, I view it as like the people that live there, the community, the people that spend time there, and then people that will enjoy the area in the future.
Sure.
I guess just to add one other thing too, just in terms of like handling conflict, real estate's kind of there could be a lot of conflict there, and just having 300 or so transactions under my belt. I mean, seen a lot of different things, and before that, I worked in the restaurant industry, so just kind of dealing with that too, and just I don't know, being able to handle certain people and situations in a way where you just kind of move forward and you do the best that you can, and if they need help or there's a problem, you try and present them with options so you can kind of resolve the issue. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Before we go to our tough moment of decision time, thought we'd circle around if Sunil Suri is in the room one last time or not. No. Okay. Okay. So then we're going to move to decision time. And so in front of us, we have ballots. And in the first round, we're going to vote for 2. And then we'll vote for 1 every other subsequent round until we get, presuming that we get a candidate out of the first round. You can only vote for each person once. You do need 2 independent names. If we get a tie, there's a possibility that happens. We will do a bake-off on that tie. And otherwise, we'll just keep iterating until we get an appointment. So we're going for 2 appointments.
So just to clarify, so on the top section, there's 3 sections. Just fill out the top one and circle just 2 names. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we'll do it that way. I was going to rip the paper off, but you're right. Why don't we just hand you the whole paper? Okay. Okay. And, you know, while Jen is tallying up, I just want to reiterate that I just want to thank everybody for being willing to step up. This is a big advisory board. It's the first chance people get when they interact with the town, and it's you know, you're projecting an image on our behalf, and so it's a big responsibility, and it is an embarrassment of riches that we have this kind of citizen base to draw from. No matter what happens here, again, welcome to serve in any volunteer body that we have. And I think Mr. Lindsay said it right. If it doesn't happen tonight, please do come back. Almost every year, every other year, we have appointments to both planning and ASRB. So, and we always need great candidates, and all of you were great candidates. So please know that this was the most competitive moment in the 7 years I've been here. Please walk out with your head up high, no matter what the outcome. And again, thank you for being here and being part of this process with us.
And at least, oh, well, I think we have the final vote. So the 2 applicants with the most votes are Don Lindsay and Robert Sullivan.
Both over 3?
Oh, Mr. Sullivan had 3 exact.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Sullivan, congratulations on your appointment. And we certainly wish you well in representing the town in this very important position. Thank you. And thank you all
Thank you
again.
for your support.
Thank you. It's a big job you have, so we appreciate it. Okay, moving right along to appointments on arts and culture. I'm assuming I'm giving.
Go ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you. By the way, just to the audience, if you want to stay for this, you're welcome to. If you don't want to, that's fine too. So there's an item on the consent calendar, which is going to expand the Arts and Culture Committee to 16. And my understanding, and I do need some clarification on this one, is that I need to pull up my sheet here, sorry. Is that we have more candidates than we do. Is that correct?
I checked in before the meeting. I think we can appoint all of the reappointment requests and applicants, if I'm not getting it.
With the expansion, with the
expansion.
so that's,
Yeah.
that was my point, is that we have to go to the if we go to the 16 in the consent calendar, which I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're in a circuit. I get it. But let's assume.
Okay, then we can actually approve all of the candidates that are listed there with that. But I don't want to sort of presuppose that we're going to approve something on the consent calendar.
If we jump into the calendar,
Oh, by the way, there is something I wanted to mention on the this particular committee. We had previously, actually a couple of years ago, and then more recently when we were going through the committees, we had asked committee chairs to report back every year on sort of the status of their committee. And my understanding, I may be wrong here, because I'm frequently wrong, is that we were more interested in the dynamics of the committee than they're checking off bullet points on those things. And like, how's attendance? Do you have any problematic members? Do you have plans for succession of the chair? Or are you sort of grooming somebody to take over? Those were the issues. I was a little less concerned that you held a certain event or whatever else. But in looking at the attendance ledger for this particular committee, I did notice there was somebody, maybe I'm either reading it wrong or I'm interpreting it wrong, or there's a reason for it. There is one person on this committee who's never attended, who hasn't attended, who's missed 13 out of 13 meetings in the past year. The committee chair did report back that there were no attendance issues. That's one of the glaring ones, I think. But again, I may be wrong or reading this wrong or maybe have bad information. But I would just point that out. That doesn't read on the applicants that we have before us. And assuming we make the change to the number of members on the committee, we can accommodate all of those applicants. So the applications committee, appointments committee is enthusiastically supporting the applicants and for the arts and culture committee.
Okay, and then from a procedural point of view, why don't we just make the motion conditional on item 6 being approved in the consent agenda?
I agree.
Okay.
There is a hand up for comment, I presume. This may be the chair of the committee.
Oh,
good.
all right. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, in regards to the individual who has not been to many of the meetings, our understanding is that that individual had resigned, and that's why he was not listed in the attendance. So that may be an issue with the record, but that is the committee's understanding that that individual did resign from the committee. So other than that, we have no attendance issues. I want to make that very clear to the council.
So just a question. So does that mean there's been 2 resignations? Because there was one candidate who, there was one member who did resign in March, and it signifies that. This one does not. This one is at the very bottom of the list, and it just has no next to every meeting.
My understanding is that, yes, that individual did submit the resignation.
Okay, so the information is incorrect. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Does that mean we still have to expand the number of members on the committee?
Yes.
It does. Okay. You made a motion and Dick seconded.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Domkef.
Yes, thank you. Town manager report. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things to mention. You'll recall that the town using funds, grant funds from Peninsula Clean Energy originated an electric garden voucher program that launched a week ago. We have already had 77 applicants to take advantage of that, which is, I think last Wednesday we came up with like 20. So that's a great intake. And again, that's available for both property owners and gardeners or landscape professionals that work in town. And we do have the enhanced rebate option for people who have larger properties as well. I don't have a breakdown of what those 77 look like, but that's a terrific uptake on that program. So that's great news. I've been saying for the last few meetings that the state, secondly, I've been saying the last few meetings that the state is due to, and they did yesterday release new fire maps. It does look substantially different than previous versions, or the previous version that was adopted for the town. We have a very small area that's really adjacent to public lands, both county public lands and city and county of San Francisco public lands that are identified as very high fire. The majority of the town, or I would say majority of the mapped area are moderate, which was not previously mapped. I'm sorry, high, and then we have also an area of moderate, but it probably not surprisingly kind of works from the northwest down. In terms of what that means, that the most critical things that it does from a regulatory standpoint, although in Woodside, I don't think this will have an effect because both of the regulatory tools that these would apply are already in place. One has to do with building standards. The other has to do with defensible space standards. And there will be communities that will have to do that 0 to 5 feet non-combustible separation in the very high fire zone. My recollection is, and we'll certainly check this with the fire district, but that their new landscaping ordinance has already accomplished that. So we will be required, both the towns of Woodside and Porto Valley will be required to adopt that map within 180 days. So we will be getting that on an agenda. And again, we can make areas more severe. We can't make them less. So we'll confer with the fire district. Our anticipation is that we'll recommend the map that the state has delivered. And we've had, again, for the mayor to speak to, we've had, I think it was the last with Assemblyman Burmer. Is that the last one on the list of folks we've talked to?
Yeah, so this week in fire prevention, I think we've now knocked on all the doors we can at county, state, and fed as we look for funding for some of our shovel-ready projects like the Defensible Space program that we have and the hazardous tree removal program. Last week, Kevin and I did a call with Assemblymember Berman to explore those funding opportunities as well as some of the constraints that exist in the state of California's budget right now. That said, I think the feedback that we got is that, you know, there's an April-May budgetary session, and we'll be working closely with them, like everybody else, to see what might be available for incremental funding for our community for fire prevention and mitigation. So that's sort of the last of the round one door knocking, begging for money with cup in hand. So now we got to see what we can do from there. So,
and in addition to that, I did write a support letter. Fire Safe San Mateo County, who has gotten grants and done work. Most recent, I think, up on Skyline, they did some tree removal. A number of years ago, they did eucalyptus removal on Sand Hill. They are applying for another community wildfire defense grant. So we've lent our support to that as well.
might that be? Just something.
I don't have a dollar figure how much of it would be targeted for us, but Fire Safe San Mateo County continues to be a great partner that helps us as well.
Any questions for Kevin? And public comment for the town manager report. Mr. Lubin.
Yes, thank you. I actually looked at the new maps today and was a little surprised how much the very high severity zone in Woodside has diminished. It's like our neighborhood's the only one left. The entire Western Hills that used to be mapped as very high danger is now moderate. And the Glens is still not mapped as a high fire danger, which was the issue that kind of got the town to, to declare the entire town as subject to Chapter 7A of the building code last time around, because the fire marshal was not happy with the state's map, and the town decided just to use it in the whole town. So I think this is still an issue to look at if we agree with the state's map.
I appreciate that. The map is just out for the last 24 hours. If you haven't seen it, it is an odd map. But I'm not an expert, but it seems odd. It was done. Okay. I think with that, we'll close town manager and we're moving on to consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved in one roll call motion unless a motion is made to pull an item. So are there any items? Yes, sir. Mr. Gold.
Pull item 4.
Sir. 4.
Pull number 9.
Number 9. All right. We'll go with number 4 first. I'm going to just, we get a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7.
Make that.
Second.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. And moving on to item 4, Councilmember Gold.
Just for
Of course. There's been a lot of public comments, so would anybody like to comment on, this is the multifamily zone for 773, second read.
We have Stephanie online.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, actually. Mrs. Disher.
Okay, I felt like I'd been hit with the Stupefy curse at the last meeting, so I appreciate this opportunity. The neighborhood wrote a letter to you, and 10 names came in after that letter, after I sent the letter. So I want to read those names into the record um, for people who also want their names at the bottom of the letter sent from our neighborhood. Mike O'Neill, Tammy O'Neill, Richard Balcon, Katya Steeson, Sharon Hall, Robert Hall, Monty Parker, Glenn Adelman, Larry Fry, and Susan Levitt. Each of you made remarks when you cast your vote to rezone Kenyatta Road for up to 20 units per acre, and I want to address some of the remarks you made in an effort to convince you to not consent to the MF20 ordinance. Mayor Dombrowski justified his vote by saying, I think as I mentioned, it's consistent with what's already been adopted. I think that's what everybody is saying. We're limiting the exposure here and bringing it back down to a level, capping it so there couldn't be a more expansive overlay project. I appreciate the last comment you made. You could make it a range. It is private property. We also know there are topography issues. I want to respond to those points. One, although the MF20 returns 773 zoning to its July form of up to 20, now we realize the effect is drastically different from the expected 20 moderate income units. I urge you to review input from the town manager and the town planner provided at the February 11th town council meeting. They each communicate that the plan is to deed restrict the units built on private property to prove moderate income. A deed restriction cannot happen without a trade to rezone the remaining 9 acres, granting the owner the right to 30 additional units. Quite openly, this is staff's plan. Your vote makes this deal almost unavoidable. The town needs 194 limited income units. HCD believes 16 to 20 of those units are coming from 773. HCD required you to rezone for a density where they could count on those units. And because you changed the zoning back after HCD looked away, it's hard to believe you won't deliver the moderate income housing another way. Suggesting those units will not be moderate income dilutes your credibility, and suggesting those units don't have to be negotiated for with an up to 20 zoning is not the town's plan. The effect of up to 20 is a mistake that should not be remade, and the effect makes it a nonsensical choice. 2, an expensive overlay project has not ever been discussed. However, the staff's planned effect of up to 20 is more akin to an overlay than the expected 20 moderate income units on 1 acre. 3, you mentioned this acre is private property, ostensibly to infer that you can't just take private property and rezone it for something someone doesn't want. This is interesting on a number of levels. Last October, the property developer told me he planned to build 20 multifamily units because it was zoned for 20. Even if he adamantly argues for 16 now, because of course he will, 4 units should not cancel a project. There are several surrounding private property owners that don't want the remaining acres rezoned to R1 and the right to 50 new units created around them. So please think about the neighboring private property rights. Moreover, if the private owner bulks at 20, then put it back to SR. I'm sure you'll find cooperation if you offer choice between the original SR zoning and 20 units per acre. Basing zoning on a premise that this is private property will not hold water. Finally, topography issues you mentioned that limit construction are neutralized if the remaining 9 acres are rezoned to R1. Smaller setbacks and smaller lot sizes allow for multiples of the units to be built if the remaining acres stay as they are zoned. In response to what
Stephanie, you're over the 3, but I appreciate you calling in, and I think it would be great if you and I sat down. I read your email 3 times and I was confused by it, and I'm wondering if it's possible you know more than we do. If that's true, we want to know. It also might be there might be some incongruent or terminology issues that we might want to hash out, and I didn't understand where you were even. Just because if things were, I mean, all this is the one acre multifamily zone. I didn't know where the 50 units were coming from R1 zoning, if that were ever to happen. Certainly there's no project to talk about deed restriction or anything like that. So I think maybe it's best if you and I just get together for a cup of coffee and
Mayor Domkowski, I know that you've seen the plans. The developer told me that you've seen the plans, and you know that you cannot negotiate for moderate income deed restriction. You heard the town planner and you heard the town manager say they plan to deed restrict. You know, you can't just deed restrict without a deal. Kevin Bryant told me what the deal would be.
Okay, well, thank you for calling in, and we appreciate the letter. I think we've all read it, and why don't you and I, again, I want to offer a one-on-one meeting so that we can really understand what your views are.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments on item number 4? Mr. Lubin?
Steve Lumen, I think you already know what I think. I told you at your last meeting, and I sympathize with many of Stephanie's concerns and we've been trading emails about them, but I do sympathize with what she's saying. I think she's opened my eyes somewhat.
Thank you, Steve. Yes. Hi.
I'm Jill Stanley. I live on Palm Circle Road with the Lubins and very close to the Dishers as well. And I live with that guy over there, my husband Scott. Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. So I guess I have a question because I'm not an attorney. I don't read, and I'm also not a city planner. So I don't know if I'm reading everything and interpreting it the same way that everybody in this group might be doing. So, because there seems to be I think what you were saying, Mayor
Good luck.
Mayor
all
Bryan,
consonants,
can I
hard to
say that,
pronounce.
Mayor Bryan?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes. So kind of you. Yes.
Is that does this, if this change is made, does that mean that there will be more high density housing built on that site? I think that's the question that I have than what it would be currently.
No. So what we're doing is memorializing what was in the housing plan with a special zone, because this is not meant for affordable or very low income housing. This is moderate or market price housing.
Yeah.
Townhouses.
Mm-hmm.
Plans will come before us, but I think they've circulated some element of plans of 16 units
Yes.
that are townhouses for that 1 acre along Kenyatta Road.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the plan was. That's the plan we've been working with for a couple of years. This really was just codifying that, make it aligned with the housing element plan that we had intended to submit. Towards the end of the plan, HCD came back and said, actually, you need to upgrade these other 2 units to 20 to 25 units per acre. And we didn't want that at 773. We wanted just up to 20. So we had to go back and create a new zone, MF20, effectively, just to sum it up.
Okay, so we're still talking about the 20 or fewer within that 1 acre.
Within that 1 acre.
And then the rest of the acreage at 773 would be subject to, has not been decided.
It has not. It is not. We are just talking about the 1 acre
1 acre.
tonight.
Okay,
on
thank
Kenyatta.
you.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted.
Ms. Lubin.
Thalia Lubin, I wasn't going to speak, but I just want to clarify. I think it was Steve last time that asked you to consider a minimum. Because what's to prevent Mr. Butler from getting the stamp of okay and then just deciding, you know what, I'm just going to build 3 regular houses, 2 regular, whatever. So there's no, I don't see.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was confused on that comment
And I
as well.
was confused by your
Yeah,
discussion
there was a
last
lot of
time, so-
confusion around this discussion last time.
I mean,
Can I
what's
ask
to,
what-
what's to stop him from, you see my point, because we're all trying to swallow this, like
Yeah.
this is screwing up our neighborhood. And we're saying, okay, it's not even going to be for school teachers, because I don't think any school teacher's going to afford $2 million, which is what he told me they're going to sell for.
Mm.
But if we're going to do that, then what's to prevent him from saying, you know what,
So
I'm not going to
nothing-
help the town. I'm just going to do what I want.
Nothing, but would it, if he does 10 units, aren't you happier than if he did 16?
3.
or 2 or 1? Why does that, why is the lower bound important
Yes,
to you?
but it's still, I still think it's too much for our neighborhood, but yes, personally, yes, selfishly, yes. But why are we going through all this, and why is he purporting to help the town and then turn around and do what's financially expedient? It's just, could you clarify?
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You want to clarify? Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm trying to have.
I'm not sure this will add anything to the discussion, but right now, because of the action that HCD had us take for the 2 town-owned sites, this one got folded in because they were all part of that MF20. And so right now, because of the action you took to address the HCD issue on the 2 town-owned sites, this property has to be developed with a minimum of 20, i.e. more 20 at the lower end. That is not what anybody wanted. That is not what you anticipated. So we're bringing this back and creating a new zone that would allow up to 20, which is what your arena plan calls for. It's what you vetted to the public. And so this is actually going to reduce the overall density that's allowed on that 1 acre.
Right. And I think the question at hand is why we didn't consider, as Mr. Lubin asked last time, 16 to 20 as a range.
That's worse. That would mean you got 16 and have 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't quite understand the issue. By the way, to the town attorney's point, you weren't here at our last meeting, I know, but I brought that exact point up that, and I know you've been following, fortunately, some of us have to. There are 4 sites in town that are housing element for multi development. 2 of them are owned by the town. 2 of them are private, one by the Kenyatta College and one 773 Kenyatta Road. When we sent our last iteration to HCD in Sacramento, they did not accept our zoning for those 4 parcels, which was up to 20. Which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 20. It could be any of those things, because they said that's not multifamily in their parlance. It has to be minimum 20. So we made the change to our zoning, and we changed our zoning laws that we only have 1 multifamily class, and we changed it so to reflect HCD's comment, which was not up to 20, but minimum 20. HCD demanded that. So we changed that jargon in our zoning plan. That changed it for all 4 parcels. We didn't want that to happen because that was inconsistent with what we had done on the 773 parcel. We're willing to do that with the 2 town-owned parcels on High Road and Ramunda, but it didn't really apply to the 773 parcel. So at our last meeting, we carved that out, if you will, and said, we're going back to the original text, which was up to 20, which means any number up to 20. In this case, we think the developer, the property owner, wants to put in 16, essentially 16 townhomes. If we changed it to a minimum 20, he's going to have a variance from us to put it in at anything less than 20. He can't do that without some, permitting or some approval from the town, and we didn't want that to happen. Which is why I didn't understand the whole last meeting, because all the proposals seem to be less more restrictive, if you will. In other words, requiring higher density than what we were proposing. We were just rolling it back to where we were. Had we had the vision, I think we would have, when we changed this text on our zoning, I think if we had thought about it a little bit more, we probably would have carved it out at that time. But we did it retrospectively. So we introduced the ordinance at our last meeting. We're enacting it at this meeting. And all we're doing is rolling it back to the 1 iteration prior to the approved one by HCD, which was, I think everybody was okay with. And I didn't quite understand the objective of, I didn't quite understand the objections. Let me put it that way. I hope that's, Gene,
Great
you weren't here, but
clarification.
that's what I
Appreciate that. We don't normally do second bites, but back for a second bite at the apple.
I
Mr.
mean,
Rowe.
I think I can explain what the objection is, and I think it's something that Stephanie pointed out. The town wouldn't be considering any rezoning of the whole 10-acre parcel were it not for the town wanting to get some moderate income property there. So if it is, so we're assuming there's going to be 16 units there. That's what we've been told. That's what Bill Butler has said he wants to build. But if you don't zone it so that he has to build 16 unit, it gives him more leverage in the subdivision to get more dense zoning on the balance of the property. I think that's Stephanie's point, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, we have to make clear that this is, I know it's more houses there, and I think it's better to have more houses there if we, on that 1 acre, if we can limit the density on the rest of the property. Does that help any?
It helps me, but I still don't understand it. But, okay.
Well, yeah, and again, all we're looking at is this 1 acre property. So there is no, there's been some inferences around horse trading or that's not anything that's happening. That's not on the table tonight at all. So I don't know how to respond to the rest of the property because there's no project in front of us to respond to. Is there anything you guys would add to that? No. Okay. Any other comments? Anything in the Zoom? All right.
There's not.
There isn't. Okay.
There's not.
Okay. Then we will close public comment. Any further deliberation on item number 4 from the consent agenda? Hearing none. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I'm going to move that we now adopt an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Woodside, amending Chapter 153 of the Woodside Municipal Code to create the multifamily district MF20 and rezone a portion of APN 068100220, which is 773 Kenyatta Road, from MF to MF20 to align the allowable density under the zoning code with the Cycle 6 housing element.
Second.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Item number 9, Councilmember Brown.
Okay, item number 9. I'm looking at this in the context of a state that is right now in a $60 billion deficit. And I say that only because the state has a habit of reaching into communities to help subsidize their shortages and budget. And I look at our cash flow consistency over the year, and I worry a bit about down the road, are we going to have as consistent a cash flow as we've been enjoying? Number one. Secondly, if I'm reading it right, we have a budget for 24, 25. That's about $1 million in the negative. In other words, $1 billion more expenses than revenue. Is that
Yeah, that sounds
okay?
in our general fund, I think.
And our revenue and our reserve is to 54% now.
Yep.
As I recall, when I started on the council, it was about 70%. Is that correct? 6 years ago?
I'd have to go back and look.
In other words,
I
my
wouldn't-
point-
I would
my
not-
point is, I'm not saying any action needs to be taken tonight. What I want everybody to be thinking about, we continue to pay down our reserves, so to speak. And we don't have a real certain future going forward. And we had right in front of us tonight, proposals to spend $800,000 on a study on the town center. And all I'm saying is, let's be real conscious of expenses going forward, guys, because we're not going to be certain about our revenue stream. And we're going to have big expenses coming up that we're going to have to pay for. And we're going to burn up all our reserves if we spend too much money. That's it.
Great message of fiscal conservatism. Couldn't agree more. And it's something to think about every time we see a project that we want to do something with. We don't think about it compared to other priorities we might have. And so we just have to, I agree. Let's keep that front of mind.
I move that we approve number 9.
I'll second.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold, Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Thank you. We have continued new business item A, just as a reminder. Hopefully, we'll have that back in 2 weeks on the town center plan to talk more about. And so we'll move on to business B. And before I hand this off to Kevin, I just maybe want to spend a moment talking about why it's on the agenda. Because this isn't the kind of thing I would naturally do. I don't believe Woodside should have a foreign policy. I think the business of this council is the business of the town. But upon further review, the issue of Measure A is not foreign policy. It is our police force. It is extraordinarily important that it's functioning properly. And as a result, I felt it was appropriate to have it on the agenda tonight. So I think with that, I will hand it off to Kevin to take us through what we're looking at.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So the item before you tonight, it's, there's the agenda title is discussion and consideration of endorsing San Mateo County's March ballot Measure A. And that resolution in your packet would put the town council on record as supporting Measure A. Measure A, what it would do, it's a special election being held this March. It was put on the ballot by the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. And it gives the Board of Supervisors, by an amendment to the charter of the county, it gives them the authority to remove for cause by a 4/5 vote of the board, the elected sheriff. And in the analysis of the measure, it outlines what grounds that the board could consider removing the sheriff. They include violation of law, the performance of duties, flagrant or repeated neglect of duties, misappropriation of public funds, willful falsification of official statements or documents, and obstruction to investigations as defined in federal, state, and local law. So those are examples. So the measure gives the board the option, it gives them the authority to do that, something that they currently do not have. As the events of the sheriff's office have unfolded over the last 6 months or so, there were 3 cities prior to this being put on the ballot that took actions calling for the resignation of the sheriff. That is not what is before you tonight. There have been 3 cities that have gone on record as supporting Measure A. That was what the resolution would do this evening. So it is not a direct call for resignation. It is support of a procedural step that would give the Board of Supervisors the power to act. Eugene and I think, can try to answer other questions around. And
Okay. Any questions for staff? And we will open this up to public comment. Any comments on new business item A, support for Measure A?
I've had a lot of, I run into a lot of people at Roberts, and even my coffee group today was evenly split on who's voting yes and who's voting no. But almost to a person, they feel that the town shouldn't take a position on this. The people who are voting no feel they're not being represented by the council if you take a stand supporting this measure. And some of them voting no feel like the recall is a better way to go. I understand why that hasn't happened. I've talked to Supervisor Mueller about it. I think the whole situation is horrible, and I'm conflicted. It's just a bad situation all around. But I in my memory, cannot remember the council taking a political position like this before. And I don't think it's appropriate for the council to support or not support this measure on either side. I just don't think it's right. And I worry that it sets a precedent for, first of all, not representing everybody in town by taking this position, and second, just taking a political stand on something that I feel we should be neutral on and just let people vote how they want to vote. So, thank you.
Thank you, Thalia. We'll move to the Zoom room.
This is Thomas again.
Yes,
Thomas?
agree with Thalia. It's unfortunate that the town has decided to get involved in this political issue. If the town goes forward and approves this, does that mean going forward that any other motion that the county or the state proposition is applied, that the town is going to take a political stance? That's not the purpose. It is the purpose of the citizens to decide yay or nay on any proposition. It should not be the town council's privy to decide for the community what direction they should go in. Was the town made to bring this up? Or was it a pressure applied on the town council or the town to do this? It seems very inappropriate to take a political stance at this time. I don't feel that the town staff received enough time to really invest in preparing yay or nay views for the town council, therefore the community, as they would in any other political situation. It's just unfortunate that you've decided to take this course and not leave it up to the good citizens of Woodside to decide what the measure should be in regards to passing or failing.
Thank you, Tom. Steve, you were headed to the mic.
I've had at times in the past had an unhappy relationship with the sheriff's office. Including one time I went to try to pay a ticket for going 16 to 55 zone and ended up in jail, where I think, members of the sheriff's office did not behave appropriately. That wasn't the only incident. I mean, could be because this county was split off of San Francisco when the good government people took over and they gave San Mateo County to the crooks. Later on, Gordon Moore's father was the undersheriff who conspired with the DA to bust the crooked sheriff during Prohibition, but that's almost irrelevant. More recently, I've been involved in bicycling issues and tried to get some action by the sheriff's office against drivers who assault bicyclists to very little avail until Sheriff Corpus was elected. And I've actually became part of Sheriff Corpus's Corpus Care program that met several times a year she met with community members in 3 different groups in the North, South, and Center County. She brought in, a whole new command staff that were really excellent people, Chris Schoon and we know Matt Fox and Ryan Monahan. Unfortunately, they're all gone, which doesn't speak well for how the sheriff's office has been managed. But I think I'm really worried that the kinds of policies that Sheriff Corpus has tried to implement are not going to be followed forward. And I think we have to find some way to accomplish what people elected her to do. I also, we've known Judge Cordell for a long time and respect her and trust her a lot. So her report weighs heavily. So I'm not saying Sheriff Corpus is perfect, and she certainly should have talked to Ladoris during her investigation. But I think this is, I'm not quite sure where I'm going, but I'm uncomfortable with the town supporting Measure A because I'm not convinced that the county isn't involved with some measure of pressure on the sheriff with interference with her management of the office. And she certainly thinks so. And I'm not sure the county's the right one to appoint the new sheriff. So I hope you don't pass this measure. Thank you.
Steve? And yes, I'm Mr. Disher. No, I was saying thank you and welcoming Dave.
David Disher. I completely overlooked this until Thalia pointed it out, and it really took me back. You know, the whereases in this resolution are all apple pie until the last one. Whereas Measure A represents a commitment to transparency, ethical leadership, and effective oversight within the sheriff's office. I voted for her because I liked her platform. I want her to provide the effective oversight. She was voted by the residents and voters of the county to do that. This Measure A is substituting what the voters put in place with the Board of Supervisors providing that effective judgment on effective oversight. I think it's improper for this town to pass a resolution that changes the votes of the people who put her in to provide effective oversight. And they can speak on Measure A, and I don't think it's any place for the town to take a position on that. I've read the articles about that report. I didn't read the 400 pages. I found snippets. It bothered me that there were redactions, that there were claims of misrepresentation. I don't know who's right, but it just seems like the voters should be doing this and the town should not be weighing in. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Oh, yes, Ms. Belletti.
Hi, I'm Sue. I live in Sue Paletti. I live in Raimondo. And I'm respectfully requesting that the town of Woodside refrain from taking an official. Sorry. I'll start over. Okay, I'm respectfully requesting that the town of Woodside refrain from taking a stance on Measure A, which concerns granting the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors the authority to remove a sitting sheriff. While I understand other cities within the county have weighed in on the matter, I believe that Woodside should remain neutral and allow the voters to decide for themselves. Measure A is ultimately a question for the voters, and taking an official position on this issue could erode public trust in the democratic process and in the independence of our local government. If Woodside were to support or oppose the measure, some voters might interpret that as a form of endorsement or disapproval from local government, which could unfairly affect their own decision-making. Voters may feel their ability to make an unbiased decision is compromised if the town council takes sides, creating unnecessary divisions within the community. The position of sheriff is enshrined in the California State Constitution under Article 11, Section 1, and is intentionally an elected office designed to ensure accountability to the public and prevent centralized power from overriding the will of the voters. The reason for the sheriff's role remains in the hands of the voter is to maintain local control and ensure that law enforcement leadership remains answerable to the community, not political forces from higher levels of government. Granting the Board of Supervisors the authority to remove a sitting sheriff undermines this core principle and could set a dangerous precedent for weakening democratic accountability. Our sheriff is accountable to the public, and it's essential for the public to have the power to hold her responsible if she isn't fulfilling her duties properly. All I know is hearsay and from the headlines. There seems to be a significant amount of scrutiny on the sheriff's office, with the FBI involved in investigating alleged corruption. However, as of now, the sheriff has not been formally charged with a crime. Being under investigation doesn't necessarily imply guilt, and due process should be followed to ensure fairness. If the investigation uncovers wrongdoing, then legal action may be warranted. If the sheriff is innocent, she should have the opportunity to clear her name through the legal process. So why allow the Board of Supervisors to step in and make a decision that overrides the vote and authority of the people? Ultimately, the voters should be the ones to decide whether they want to retain the sheriff either through regular elections or through recall efforts if they're dissatisfied with the performance or behavior. In short, with regards to Measure A, the resolution before you in tonight's meeting, It's about ensuring the fairness and neutrality of the process. I urge you to refrain from taking a stance on Measure A and to consider the broader implications of taking a public position and to allow the voters to make their own decision without being influenced by the position of the town council. Thank you.
Sue? Any other public comment on this issue? Okay, then I see nothing in the Zoom room. I'll confirm with Kevin. Okay, we will close public comment. And I think we'll start on this side of the room. Why don't you start?
I want to thank everybody for their comments and also those who wrote letters, one way or the other on this thing. I think that first, I think we actually address this issue. I would just point out everybody is free to vote the way they want to vote. And that taking a position on this may be controversial. There is a distinction, however. The Sheriff's Department in San Mateo County is our police force. It's Woodside's police force. Those officers who are just beyond that door, who park their motorcycles in their SUVs in front of us, they work for the Sheriff's Department. Our sheriff is essentially our police chief. So taking a position on it is not some esoteric issue, the state or the country on foreign affairs. We're talking about our police chief. We're talking about the person who these guys and gals report to. And I think it's a big issue. And I'm going to get to that in just a second, what changed my mind, because we've talked about this before. And I think that the issue of, I understand the reasons to stay out of it. I really do. I supported Sheriff Corpus when she ran 2 years ago, and I celebrated her victory. But unfortunately, her actions since her election have been very disturbing and very inconsistent with those pledges. You can't read Judge Cordell's report and her conclusions without being appalled. They are really disturbing findings. And Judge Cordell's reputation, I heard that, certainly concur with that. Sheriff, I just wanted to point out for those who said that there's a process here, I'm fully with that, and ultimately will be. But the sheriff has refused to testify to the says a lot. She also asked $10 million go away, says even more. I thought that was a pretty telling moment. The list of those supporting Measure A is growing and includes a unanimous vote for the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. Admittedly, with course Supervisor Jackie Spear joined, but it includes Ray Mueller, who's somebody that I trust, new Congressman Kevin Mullen, former member of Congress Anna Eshoo, who I trust, State Senator Josh Becker, and Assembly members Mark Berman and Diane Pappin, all of whom I trust. It also includes resolutions that either support Measure A or express no confidence in Sheriff Corpus. They are from Redwood City, San Mateo, San Carlos, Millbrae, Belmont, and South San Francisco. Those are the 6 cities that the town manager referred to. 3 of them took a position of no confidence. 3 of them took a position of supporting Measure A. Of those, they were unanimous votes in every single case except 2. Was 1 person who abstained because of a conflict, and there was 1 person who voted no. So it was 28 to 1 to 1, I think, was the final count on that. But the most important data point for me was the lack of support that she has from within her own ranks. Not only has the rank and file of deputies expressed no confidence in the sheriff through their union and through their comments, but all of her captains, some of whom we know and we trust, authored a letter with the same sentiment. All of her police captains have come out with a show of no confidence. Some of them have been fired for it. Some of them who were in this room within the last couple of years, some of whom were our captains here in Woodside. That was sufficient for me, and that was actually the point where I changed my position on it. The current situation of chaos and mistrust in our law enforcement agency is just no longer acceptable. This is our police force. This is our police chief that we're talking about. Again, this is not some academic or esoteric issue for me. I have a perfect right to comment on the person who is in charge of our law enforcement. I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but to be frank, It's no longer a difficult decision for me or a difficult vote, and I plan on voting in favor of this resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Abarish.
Thank you. I share the concerns that people have shared and spoken about not overstepping our boundaries and not stepping into places and trying to tip the scales. But I do very strongly feel that this is something that's affecting us. This is the sheriff's department, and it's not a question of, you know, whether or not the whole sheriff's department's doing a good job, and that's what we're going to see, you know, from our perspective. I think in my role outside of the council, I'm an employment lawyer. I usually work with companies that are, you know, dealing with lawsuits and employment issues. And I have to say, I've never read in a report, an independent report, quite as concerning as the one in this case. And that's in about 10 years of doing this job. So while I personally don't really want to take a public position and get involved and make a mess out of something that's that could, you know, spill over into our town and frankly is spilling over into our town, I think we have a responsibility to speak up and to give the power to the sheriff's department's HR function, essentially, which is the Board of Supervisors. And so in their role, they are the ones who are receiving the complaints from the sheriff's deputies and dealing with these issues. And they're the ones who hired the independent investigator to investigate these issues. And so to say that they shouldn't have or can't have the power to investigate these, to act on the results of the investigation. I'm sorry, my back's spasming. Oh.
Your point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, hang in there. Councilmember Brown.
We also ought to keep in mind, we have a contract with the sheriff's department that we spend, am I right on this, Kevin, about $2.5 or so $1 million a year? The sheriff's department's our contract?
Our contract is 3.1.
3.1 now. That's a lot of our budget, guys. And I look at this as a way for us to say, do we have full confidence in what we're getting for our money? Simply said, I love the sheriff. They do great work for us. But we have all seen firsthand when the sheriff department can't perform the way they'd like to because they either have staff shortages or turmoil among the leadership, both of which we've seen over the last couple of years. Some which may be the sheriff's responsibility, but she's the boss person. And ultimately that's where I would look to say, how do we say we're not happy? If not to say, we agree with others who have said that this isn't right and we need to make a change. So my vote would be go along with what is being asked.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Wall.
All right. So I'll start off by saying I just think this is such a sad situation. And I supported Sheriff Corpus. And I'm really troubled by what I, have read in the news, resignations in her office. I haven't read the full report. I've read what has been reported about it. Very concerning. A lot of the our local state officials who I really respect and trust have come out and endorsed Measure A. So, I came in tonight actually undecided. I really could go either way on this. And, had I been asked to endorse Measure A in a personal capacity, I would have actually. And I know how I'll personally vote on Measure A. But I mean, really the question I think before us tonight is, should our Woodside Town Council take a position on Measure A? And I don't, I don't even know if I squarely see this as a political position. I mean, Measure A, as was described by our staff, is a procedural step. And so, on the one hand, should we take a position on a procedural event, right? So if the voters do choose to pass Measure A, I assume the Board of Supervisors would then, take the opportunity to ask the question, so should the sheriff be removed? And I do take comfort in the fact that it would require a 4/5 vote, which is a pretty high standard. And the sheriff would have an opportunity to be heard. And one thing I've been really dissatisfied with is the lack of participation in the investigation. I would really like to hear from the sheriff, right? Like, why are all the deputies in your office or the captains in your office resigning? So, again, I'm torn about whether the council endorsing Measure A actually would be a political statement or more just the endorsement of a procedural step. But I take the feedback from the residents this evening during the public comment really seriously. I have questions myself about, why haven't there been more aggressive efforts at a recall? What is the right thing to do in terms of due process? Does the council taking a position set a bad precedent? And I also sort of wonder, I mean, will the Woodside Town Council taking a position on Measure A really move the needle? So, I mean, you can see I'm kind of like working through these thoughts in my head in real time before you. I'm really torn on this one, but I think having heard unanimous resident feedback on, from both, people that support Sheriff Corpus to other people that say, hey, I'm really concerned by what I see, but I still don't think the council should take a position. I think I'm coming down on the side of, I think we should just remain neutral. So that's where I'm coming down on this one.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wall. I just also want to thank everybody for the comments, the ones that we received here in this hall and the ones that we received over email, which were very compelling as well. And I think I just also want to say, after listening to these comments, I also want to say it's an absolute honor to serve with you guys and gals. I think the only thing that hasn't been said that I want to say is that I feel very strongly that we have an obligation to lead, and we have an obligation to show moral and ethical leadership, and to expect that of our elected officials, and to protect. I think, as Councilmember Brown said, this is the single largest budget item. This is the biggest recurring expense item we have in our budget, and it impacts our ability to protect and serve in this community. So this is, I thought that was well said, it is a procedural step. It's one that deserves our support, and we need a high-functioning sheriff's department. So on behalf of all the citizens of Woodside, whether you agree or not, whether we should be taking this position, I see it as an obligation to take this position and to not shirk that responsibility. So I am in support of this, and I really appreciate the comments that were made on all sides. So I think with that, we are going to take we have a motion.
Make one.
Hassan, did you want to
Hassan, did
add
you have
any
anything
more?
else you wanted to add? And how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I have a herniated disc. It every once in a while flares up, so I apologize.
I'm sorry.
But I do have more thoughts than I
Okay,
was hoping to
please.
share, so
Yes, of course.
Apologies for the delay. And thank you all. In my district, I've had a number of people who've asked me what my thoughts were on this issue, and a number of them have no idea what's happening, and they just say, what's going on? Some people I told, that we were voting on this issue because they didn't realize they don't follow, and they said, oh, there's an issue with our sheriff. They had no clue, and even though some of them voted for the sheriff, they just don't have the time and the bandwidth and the capacity to really follow closely and to review the reports and everything else that's happening. And and in some of these situations, I feel like we all fall into that category in some way or another. There's certain conflicts, issues, we just don't really know what's happening with them. And sometimes it's good to know that you can turn to somebody you trust that, looked into the issue and how do they feel about it? And so that's where I feel like endorsements are important. And I think we owe it to the town and we owe it to the sheriff's deputies, who are providing support to our town to be able to empower the board of supervisors to be able to make these kind of decisions, especially when, they've requested an independent report. And so, here it's not, we have two sides. We have the judge, the former judge who made a report, and then the sheriff on the other side. It's the sheriff on the one side, a large number of her sheriff's deputies, and the board of supervisors on the other side. And she was brought in as a neutral party to do an independent investigation. And during that independent investigation, she found some very concerning things. And so it's not that we're, and this is where I think it's important to get this kind of feedback and have this kind of discussion. And so to the extent people don't have the time to really look into these issues, I think to the extent they want to, look at, well, which way is our town councilor, that I trust, or whoever, whether it's me or Paul or anyone else. How are they feeling about this issue? I think it's important to get it out there, especially when it's something that is actually affecting our town. And that's all I have to say about it.
A motion?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Woodside stating the town's support for San Mateo County Measure A on the ballot for March 4th, 2025.
Second.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold, Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Okay, moving on to reports. Is Melissa with us for volunteer committee?
No, I've got it.
Okay. Thank you.
So this may be, I don't think back, someone will correct me probably if I'm wrong about this, but that we have 3 events coming in March from 3 different committees, and I don't know that we've ever had that many sort of special events, not counting recreation activities, being sponsored by our volunteer committees. So I just wanted to mention them. I think it's terrific. On Sunday, actually March 2nd, the Environment and Open Space Committee are doing a spotlight on owls and bluebirds. Krista New, who calls in often about Highway 84, is involved with the Audubon Society. She will be presenting, as well as a local gentleman who does bird tours, which apparently are very, very highly regarded. So that's this Sunday evening. Next Friday, of course, the monthly First Friday, which they just continue to just churn out terrific programming and fill the hall. Their event is the Jurassic Resident Arts Program through the art of Robert Bultmann. I don't know if you know who Robert Bultmann is, but he's a photographer who lived in Woodside for time. I forget if he's still here, but one thing that we do have that is unique, if you're ever in Val, you probably know this, Sue, you may not. Mr. Bultmann actually donated to the town a number of years ago a set of prints of photographs taken in and around Woodside, which hang inside Town Hall, which are one of a kind and fantastic. So that'll be a great program. And then on the 30th, the Climate and Sustainability Committee will be hosting a home electrification event for people who are interested in transitioning to all electric homes. So got a lot of community activities going on this month.
Great. A lot of good things going on. Any questions? Comments? We'll move on to council communications. Anything anyone wants to discuss with the group?
I have another event coming.
Oh, yes, sir.
We have.
Good
and
transition.
It involves a very interesting group we just discussed, the Sheriff's Department. They are hosting a crime prevention workshop March in 3 and 5 here. And they will be discussing crime trends in the town, how to protect yourself, your home, how to protect yourself from identity theft, all the kinds of things that people are most concerned about. And this time, we've invited Portola Valley residents to join us. Since we have a joint sheriff department, let's see if we can get some joint input. And if somebody's not happy with what the sheriff's been doing, this is your opportunity to come out and tell them so. March 20th, 3 to 5.
That's fantastic. Dick, thank you again for the series you're doing. It's really impressive. And nope. Paul?
I have one. I attended a San Mateo County, it's currently called the Department of Emergency Management. It used to be Office of Emergency Services, and they're changing their name yet again to just Emergency Services. You'll be seeing this, I think, nationwide. It just means I get another jacket, which allows me to walk into a crime scene. But they are one of the big things that they're doing, which reads directly on some of the plans we have here in Woodside, is they're working very hard on evacuation ways to get in and out of town, especially during a fire. Obviously, that was a big issue with the recent fires in Southern California. You've seen all the cars piled up on PCH trying to get out of Malibu and just burning to the ground. They have some software, which is pretty interesting, that actually tracks traffic in real time and tells emergency services the best routes to get out of town. That's a big deal in Woodside because we have such narrow, windy roads that, you could get on a street and where you really should have been going down, Skyline instead of trying to get back Woodside Road because it's blocked somehow. And they're getting this information out. There's also a user app that people have now called Genesis, I think is the name of it, but that you should definitely have on your phone, which will tell you the same thing. But emergency services uses this. But the reason I bring this up is that they're currently working on evacuation drills in several different cities. I know we've got one here coming up, a real time that we're at least working on, at least I think we are. And I just wanted to encourage the town staff to work with both emergency services, the Woodside Fire Protection District, on coordinating these, because they now have a lot of experience in doing these and sort of tracking them and getting folks out of the glens and out of the hillsides and on some pretty isolated areas. And I was very impressed with the technology that they have today. The issue is getting it in the hands of homeowners and property owners and residents so that they can find the proper way out and which way to go, because it's a big decision which direction you head out if you're going to get out alive or not. And so given Woodside's challenges, it's a big deal. But we're working on this actively at emergency services, and I would just encourage the town to coordinate with them.
Is the software Ladris?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
we have a contract with them. We are in fact working with them.
yes, I remember.
I would say, I just had a meeting last week, the town emergency services group committee, and we are working exactly that kind of conversation.
On the evacuation drill.
Evacuation, go bags, all the kinds of things you should be thinking about, starting from the premise of, we don't want the LA fires to occur here. If they do, what do we do? And how do we prepare everybody for that? And maybe 2 or 3 sessions. I'm sure it's going to involve the county, probably CAL FIRE, Woodside Fire, a whole bunch of groups. And then we're tentatively shooting for May to start the series.
Thank you.
Some Councilmember? Very good. Thank you again for your willingness to serve on Peninsula Clean Energy. Glad that worked out on behalf of all of us. And I think with that, at 9:09, we're going to call the meeting. Thank you all.